Hello, good evening, and welcome back. Another day, another news cycle, and this channel stops for no man. We're not out of the election territory yet, no, of course not. With the results in, we're now going to the 5 big things on Boris Johnson's to-do list. So we're going to rattle off through these, and they leave the most important till last, but that's the BBC, so they don't like talking about immigration. So as the BBC says, number 1, get Brexit done, and trade agreed. The trade with the European Union as a collective isn't as important as it would be for the individual countries which comprise it, but of course the European Union doesn't allow that. When it comes to things like food, well, we've got South American countries lining up to offer us their beef. You can guarantee that there's going to be less halal coming from them, so it's a win-win as far as I'm concerned. And the same goes with other things. If you want cheaper electronics, then you go to China, but there's a reason why they won't later on, and fair enough, not for the reasons they give, but to be honest, given how China is treating its own people and also the rest of the world, who really wants to do business with China? They'd move a bit further east and go to Japan, the wonder that is Japan, from its post-war miracle, given that they weren't allowed to get that much tax, because the Americans thought, oh, well, the government will have too much money if they use too much tax, so we're going to limit that, which backfired on the Americans, of course, in a way, given that then there was the miracle that happened in Japan, but they were happy enough to do trade, so it's fine. So, number 1, get Brexit done and trade agreed. Say it's an ambitious trade agreement with the EU, and they will leave at the end of January, and the transition period will be done by the end of 2020. So, we will have left in name only at the end of January, and then actually left properly at the end of December 2020. So this time next year we will have pretty much transitioned out and we'll be back on the global stage as a world player, and much better off for it, of course. So meet growing demands on the NHS, and of course with the trade agreements with the EU, as other countries will likely want to leave the EU as well, we'll be showing them how it is possible, and then the EU will collapse even quicker and then form separate trade agreements with us. So, meet growing demands on the NHS. I said, among other things, this would mean tens of thousands of extra nurses and about 50 million more GP surgery appointments a year. Many health leaders felt these pledges did not go nearly far enough to address a fundamental problem. Demand for patient care is rising relentlessly, but NHS resources and staff levels just haven't kept up. Well, yes, in that case, you can simply say, if you weren't born here and you haven't been paying in at all, then you can't have access to the NHS. We don't want health tourism, in which case, and we either get them to pay for it, or they just don't receive it, as simple as that, just like the other countries do. Even inside the European Union, funnily enough, if you go to Spain and you need their healthcare, they will charge you, fair enough, so the same can be done over here. That would of course discourage immigration here if they're just looking to get things from Britain without giving anything back in return. So that'll help decrease immigration right there. So you can easily lower immigration in a roundabout way instead of putting a hard cap on the figures. And of course that's a much better way to do it, because then you're encouraging the kind of people in the country that you want to be there. Whereas at the moment you're encouraging the kind of people who would just like to get a load of handouts instead of contribute. But of course the BBC aren't going to acknowledge that. Closing that gap will need time and money, but to actually bring down waiting lists and modernise services will require still more. And they say there is the immediate challenge of the next few months and a potentially very difficult winter for the NHS, with increased pressures because of flu and other winter ailments. Yes, noticeably because of the decrease in vaccinations, the anti-vax campaign seems to be on the rise yet again, and of course you've got other takes on it, not trusting modern science. But hey, I suppose that's natural selection. Then the social care crisis, which is almost twinned with the NHS, is more welfare that the Conservative government shouldn't be worrying themselves with. But they say he's promised cross-party talks within 100 days, but it's worth noting that it is more than 1,000 days since the Conservative first promised to fix the vital system. Yes, I would say don't promise it and then just don't do anything about it. Just let people take care of themselves. If you have children, they should take care of you. If you have parents, you should take care of them. And if you have neither but get on with your community, then they will take care of you, as you will take care of people within your community. Let people do this on an individual basis. People will be much more willing to give, and also they'll feel better about giving if they're helping out people that they know and care about. Simple as that. I think the Meals on Wheels example in America was a great example of this, whereby Donald Trump cut the government funding of about 5%, and then their donations went up by about triple, so 300%. So Meals on Wheels were much better off in America through private charity. So the same goes here. And then of course people are happy that their money isn't going places that they don't want it to go or don't know where it's going with tax, but instead it's going where they want it to go. And then the charities or whoever they give it to are more accountable than the government. It's a win-win-win. However, there will be an extra £1 billion per year for the next 5 years to prop up the current system. However, it will be shared with equally stretched children's social care. Experts warn it won't be enough to tackle the pressures families face right now. Well, again, prioritise the people who are born here and have contributed here. Easy as that, because the whole country is overstretched and you can't help the third world in this country. Economically speaking, it's 27 times more cost effective to help them in their own countries. So if you want to help more people, help them over there. But you don't know that you're helping them unless your own country is a success, and ours clearly isn't, given the amount of debt we're in. So how about we get our own house in order before we then try and intervene in other countries? When has interventionism ever worked? Number 4, work to hit climate change targets. Why are the Conservatives mentioning this at all? Because it's a stipulation for trade agreements, essentially. So in December 2020, the UK hosted a massively important global climate gathering in Glasgow, the UN COP26 meeting. Campaign group Friends of the Earth says the UK will be humiliated if it hosts the summit without setting out how it will meet its own carbon targets in advance. Yes, they're just focusing on carbon here. But the fun things here is that they say you've got to have tens of millions of homes be insulated. Well, that can come down to building them, considering as we are building so many more as well. And then when old ones become more decrepit, when they're fixed and rebuilt, it's better technology, better insulate them. Easy as that. The same goes for renting, of course, because they're more cost effective if they're better insulated, so money will be a driving factor. Then you've got road and airport buildings, they're all compatible with cutting emissions of carbon dioxide. So, they say this is also the case even if cars are fully electric. Yes, because the electricity has to be generated somehow. Of course, you could go nuclear, but then you risk more Chinese involvement, like Hinkley Point, of course. And they recommend that people should be helped to walk and cycle. Off you go. Just kick on the backside. Off you trot. Although, of course, the exercise thrust is very good for just human well-being. That'll decrease the strain on the NHS and increase people's mood and productivity just by exercising more, so I'm all for that. And some companies even have that as a bonus scheme, that they have some sort of wearable fitness technology, and then depending on how much exercise they've done, they are rewarded monetarily with that, because it helps the rest of their productivity, of course. So go for that. That's what I would say. Create incentives that way. And they say that the EU is putting a border tax on countries that don't cut greenhouse gases. So, if we're wanting to do trade with the EU, we have to agree to cut our emissions, but we don't have to, so how about no? And the USA said it won't have climate change even mentioned in any trade deal. Wonderful. Last but not least is the state of nature. In October 2019, the Conservative government published a radical environment bill setting firm targets for conservation against the wish of the Treasury. So yes, the one thing the Conservatives are conserving is nature. So, well done, at least there'll be somewhere to walk and cycle. And then number 5, they do actually mention transform the immigration system, saying an Australian-style points-based system, but they do point out that this won't necessarily decrease immigration, because then you're saying, yes, we're going to have the brain drain from other countries instead of train up our own people, and then of course we're going to have more dependent people without any opportunities in our own country. So I don't see how that will really be as effective as thought out. So, but we need the top performers from other countries. Yeah, maybe, or maybe you can just train them up yourselves, unless you're a race realist and believe then that what IQ is different based on race, and Britain as an average doesn't have a high enough IQ to compete on the world stage, in which case I just simply disagree with you and point to the literature which proves that. But they go on to say, can it really be introduced by the deadline the Conservatives have set out of January 2021, and can anyone be sure the final scheme will look like the one being promised? Put simply, no. No, not at all. As the impact on net migration, that Johnson says it will fall, but there's no clear way to see how it will work on that, given that he's promising no cap on skilled workers or in other sectors like hotels and construction. So we simply don't know what the government will deliver, what the system's impact will be, and whether leaving the EU and implementing it will make a jot of difference to the overall numbers. In which case we're still going to have the strain on the infrastructure that we do at the moment. So, of course the Conservatives are my first choice, but they seem to be the lesser of the evils given the choices that we have. So as always, let me know what you guys think down below. In fact, given that we don't have an actual, patriotic alternative or something that could be done for the betterment of this country if you ignore the politically correct and then the word games that you have to play just to appease the left, let me know what policies you think should be adopted by a party in the UK that might not have any chance of winning yet because either the media will ignore them or just drag them down horrifically. But I'm intrigued to see what you guys think, if there are any grassroots feelings, so do let me know. Otherwise, have a wonderful weekend, like, share, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I will see you next time.